to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and Dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into rankings. Welcome to the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, and tonight we're going to be talking about some tougher to rank players, maybe some players that have had some injuries, dealt with some issues, whatever it may be. And, no matter where we move them around in our own rankings, we're not always 100% sure. Now, this is all based on an article that our good friend and co-host Aaron Wilcox made and put out on campuscanton.com. So we're going to bring him and Andy on. We got the whole crew here. But Aaron, this was something that obviously was on your mind. Some players that you were fiddling around with your ranks and everything. And the next thing you know, you're like, I got an article to write.
Yeah, absolutely. There were just multiple guys that I had a hard time with in the ranks, and I feel conflicted on. I do obviously have them ranked. I was able to kind of come to a consensus where I ultimately place those players, and I put the ranking and I put the rationale in that article. So I encourage people to go out to campuscanton.com, check out that difficult players to rank article. We may cover some of those players here in the podcast today, but we'll leave maybe some surprises for those who want to check out that article as well. But yeah, no, excited to talk about it. There's more names too. When you go through an exhaustive and all-inclusive list of rankings, you realize how many guys you're maybe splitting hairs on, and or just, am I way too high? Am I way too low on this guy?
And I mean, that's the tough thing about Devy anyways. There's so many opinions and everyone's opinions are different, of course. And sometimes it's insane to the point of, I've heard podcasts in the past day or two where co-hosts were 10 spots off on any given player. And, like that might not sound that insane, but when you're talking about going from like number 1 to number 10, that's a pretty huge difference. And so, it obviously ranking these players is difficult. It's something we have to do, but it's also fun to do and fun to discuss. Speaking of which, Andy, hopefully all the audio is going to be great and everything. You ready to talk, buddy?
Yeah, I think my audio is fine. I just needed work out a few kinks, so we're good to go now. But yeah, first of all, well done to our good friend and co-host Aaron. I thought that was a wonderful article on Campus to Canton. Certainly some guys that maybe I don't think they're difficult to rank, but they are in general difficult to rank because a lot of them are guys that we have high expectations for, maybe didn't meet those expectations last year, or some other situation like that where there's an injury coming in. It's hard for me to say that I'm 100% correct or wrong on any of these guys, but it's a good article to read for those reasons. There's something with all the players that he mentioned where it's just like, it could go either way. You could really hit a high ceiling on one of these players, or you could end up in the bottom basement dwelling cellar doing nothing with some of these players. So which is why it's difficult, exactly, precisely. So I do encourage everyone to go read it. I definitely brought another position group or players that I would want to add to it. I'm trying to think for additional ones as we go through the episode. I'm sure we'll come up with one just as we're sitting here talking. But I think it is a good discussion to have.
Absolutely. The only thing I really didn't like about the article is the fact that Felix Sharp said that he agreed with it. That scared me off of the of those rankings. But but other than that, I thought it was amazing. But let's dive in. Not necessarily to the article. We don't want to give too much away, but I'm sure we will discuss some of the players that are there. But Aaron said you had quite a few beyond that. Andy had a couple, and I have a couple to throw out there as well. But Aaron, it's your idea, your baby. So start us off here.
Sure thing. Well, speaking of Felix Sharp, no, I appreciate Felix's input on my article. He was, yeah, basically saying like he agreed with most of the takes. He did disagree with one running back take. His RB1, I want to say, is Isaac Brown, Louisville running back. And that actually is a hard guy to rank. Isaac Brown was not in my article, but I will bring him up because I think that's a valid point to bring up a guy who's, I mean, he's been injured. He's electric when he has the ball in his hands, but he's very much an undersized back as well. So Isaac Brown, Louisville running back, definitely going to be a dynamic duo type of situation there this year. They're probably not going to trust him to be a true workhorse. Like, he's just not built that way. But, I mean, we're seeing right now in the NFL, they're willing to let these electric running backs get at least decent enough workload. And yes, they don't need to have 80% of the snaps, 80% of the touches to still be very effective for fantasy football purposes. But then we got to bring in the health aspect because guys like Devin Achan and some of those other guys in college, like they were very healthy. And we have not seen that out of Isaac Brown, at least last year, right? He needs to put it together and he needs to play a full season. Otherwise, an NFL squad is going to be a little bit scared off to even invest highly in him and utilize him as more than just kind of like a Keaton Mitchell type or something like that. Because if he can't be consistent, take on high workloads, be really durable, it's just not going to be useful for an NFL offense as it's going to scare him off. But what do you guys think? Is he hard to rank? I have him at RB5 right now in the Devy landscape, but that kind of scares me having him that high, to be honest.
Well, I'll jump in real quick. I think that he's hard to rank in that I don't know where to put him in my top five. But I do think he belongs in the top five. I just don't know if I'm sitting here with Felix Sharp's conviction saying this is the RB1 in all of Devy, all of college football. I get what he's saying because of what we've seen him do when he does have the ball in his hands. Like, it's almost just like if Isaac Brown has the ball, an explosive play is coming if you flip a coin, right? It's going to happen. Like, he's going to bust it for 60, 70-yard touchdown, whether he's catching it or running it. That's obviously not something that's going to happen in the NFL for any player. So it's hard to say, like, well, how much of this is a scheme thing? How much of this is just like, okay, ball luck, like things are falling in your favor, more times than not, because the sample size every year is a little bit lower than a lot of these other workhorse backs that we do like a Jeremiah Love, for example. I think, if you look at their touches, it's got to be, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Isaac Brown probably had half the amount of touches that Jeremiah Love, maybe even less than that, last year. So there is that concern. But you can't deny the talent when he touches the ball and does the things that he does. So I do think he's top five. Where you put him there is where it starts to get a little bit challenging. And I'm not scared off by his size, by the way. I think he's like at 195 to 200 pounds, which that seems to be like kind of this spot in the NFL where it really doesn't matter, right? Like, you can be under 200 in the NFL and still be dynamic, a la like Jahmyr Gibbs. So that or Devin Achan, who we talked about. So that's not too terrifying to me, but I get that is still a concern for some people. But for me, it's not something I'm really paying attention to.
And in theory, I definitely agree with you on the size thing. Like, if he's getting up to close to 200, right, that's not a concern. But at 5'9", 190, and maybe he's not even that, then to me that starts being a concern, if that's true, and if he doesn't put on mass. But he just got that kind of lean, small frame where sometimes I'm just a little bit skeptical of these guys packing on pounds.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see, I understand, how you could be a little nervous. He only played 9 games, only had 101 rushing attempts, added 13 receptions on there. Um, is a team ever going to look at him as a true workhorse? But, I said that about Jeremiah Love, like he wasn't that, like he had 188 rushing attempts last year, compared to 101. And that was in more games because, Brown only played 9 games. So like, think about, it might be similar, similar numbers as far as, the actual rushing attempts per game and things. When you're looking at what Brown did and what Jeremiah Love did. Now Jeremiah Love is bigger, but he was also, taller and so like the BMI is not even that different, when you're really looking at him. And that being said, of course, we would love for him to be bigger than 190 pounds, and we would hope for that. But I kind of feel like what you're doing, or what other people are doing, and maybe you as well, Aaron, you're saying like it's tough to rank, but I feel like we're kind of doing what we did with Devin Achan all over again, where we knew Achan was a stud. We knew this. Like we always said, he's amazing. Like we loved him for C2C, we loved him for CFF, but then when it came time to actually like say what's he going to be in the NFL, we got kind of nervous. I'm like, well, he's tiny, and that kind of stuff. And I think we're doing the same thing with Isaac Brown. Maybe no. I mean, Achan definitely even had more of a workhorse back profile. So obviously, we're going to need to see Brown do that this year, be able to put up somewhere around 200 attempts, total or whatever, something to that effect. And then obviously we'll feel a little more, comfortable with it. But if he holds up anywhere close to the efficiency that he's put up in the past, I think we really have to just look at him and say, you know what, the NFL is leaning towards these smaller guys, and these are guys that are going to break huge plays, and we just have to do it. Right now, I have Isaac Brown as my RB1 in Devy, and so I get what you're saying. I understand why he would be difficult to rank. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's like 2 or 3 guys that are pretty close. I mean, I won't nitpick any of the top like 3 guys. Um, it's not like he's leaps and bounds above these guys, but as of right now, he's my top guy, and that's even with his BMI kind of being counted against him. But honestly, I'm looking at the top guys, like Nate Shepard, Ahmad Hardy, Hollywood Smothers, Justice Haynes. Like these are not huge BMI players. They're all kind of around the same area, 28.5, like somewhere maybe get up to 29 BMI. Like these are not your Bijan Robinson 32 BMI like level players or anything like that. So, I feel like we're in a different we're in a different realm of football. You're kind of looking at your De'Ara Hills, if I could speak. You have a lot of these smaller guys that are just doing really well, and we just have to kind of get used to it now.
Yeah, I can see that, but I mean, I want to give De'Ara Hill some credit because he was weighing in at 200 plus pounds. Yeah, I know he's a little bit taller, right? So the BMI goes down, but as a freshman versus third year, still seeing 190 listed on there for Isaac Brown, missing time with injury. That's not something we saw with Devin Achan. He was like you said, in his third year, he was that workhorse back in the SEC, getting tons, almost 200 rushing attempts and getting 36 receptions as a junior before he declared for the NFL draft. So I think it's a little bit of a projection for Brown, but that's why people have him high, right? We project him to take that next step in somewhat of a murky running back landscape currently. So, hey, I don't hate it, but definitely something I have some difficulty doing. I'm kind of torn on him.
Yeah, Achan only had 130 rushing attempts the year prior, and that was in 12 games. So, I mean, honestly, the numbers are not that different. If anything, Isaac Brown was actually more efficient, with his numbers than per play than even Achan was. I think that was when he was splitting time with. Was he still splitting time with Zach Evans at that point? I can't remember in that sophomore
Isaiah
year.
Spiller was the back.
Oh, was it Spiller?
Yeah,
who's the
Isaiah
little
Spiller,
guy
sorry.
that ended up going to the Dallas Cowboys? He was on that team too, wasn't he?
Oh, really?
No, he was in the Big 12.
Oh, Deuce Vaughn. He
Oh,
was
yeah.
at like
Deuce
Kansas
Vaughn,
State
yeah.
or something. Yeah,
Kansas
yeah.
State. Okay, yeah. All right, I messed that up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
No,
no,
you're
you're
right.
right. So
Yeah.
Isaiah
So
Spiller.
yeah, it was Spiller, and then then it was 1 year where he was by himself essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, but Spiller was a 1,000-yard rusher, and much more capable of shouldering that load in the SEC versus Isaac Brown. It's just injury, right? So we got to see it.
Yeah, and now I have said I'm a pretty big proponent of Keywan Brown as well. So like I don't get me wrong, I like I like both players, but I don't know. You see that level, you see almost 15% big time run rate, and man, it's hard to pry me off of that player. But yeah, I like that call out. I think that's a good one to start with. I mean, like I said, I have no problem saying he's at the very least a top three RB for me in Devy. Like I said, I have him technically at one right now, but I mean, and maybe it's not saying as much as it was in the past because I don't know that we really have anyone that's like truly dead set right now. I mean, somebody's going to have to take a step forward this year, and we'll see who it is. But I kind of have a pretty large grouping where like any of those probably top 10 players could really become the next number one, number two, whoever, and any of them could technically fall out as well. So I think that one's definitely interesting. I actually have a similar player, and he's actually at RB2 for me. So I have a player that I struggle with because technically he was a freshman running back on a not so great team, not amazing team, and his big time run rate would actually leave you like normally if I say that number I'm out, like I want nothing to do with it. But something about Nate Shepherd and in his freshman season, I kind of want to forgive it, and I kind of want to give him more time and say, and he's actually my RB2 in Devy. And like I said, there's a lot of close guys, and there's a lot up in the air right now. But as a true sophomore, we're hoping that things will be okay with Duke. And we have seen we have seen running backs take a pretty big step forward in year two with athleticism and bursts and things like that, big plays. We've seen that happen in the past, even with like Jeremiah Love. Like going into year two was a huge leap from even what he had done in year one. And so, could we see the same thing with Nate Shepherd? I've kind of seen his ranking all over the place. Technically, I have him at RB2, but man, seeing that 6.5% big time run rate kind of scares the crap out of me. So, I kind of want to hear from you guys. Do you think the athleticism is there? Do you think that he has the opportunity to grow, or do you think this is kind of a, hey, he's young, he had a great year, but it's probably never going to turn into what you're hoping for?
So you in particular, John, have always been higher on Nate Shepherd. Maybe Aaron has been too, but I feel like I associate him more with John. So I don't know. I'm not sold on it. Like the yards after contact is good when you look at the rest of his team, but I don't know if there's any value to that. And like you said, the big time run rate is a little bit low. The yards or the breakaway yards per attempt is under 2, which I don't like. He does appear to be like a pretty good receiver. So like the fact that he's a true freshman leads me to believe like he can improve on some of these things, and the team can improve around him. Like this is year 2 of Bill Belichick. You got to assume something's gonna like improve there, right? Like he's not just gonna be a middling ACC team forever. Like this guy had to have gone there for some reason. So I get why people are like taking him. If you look at like Devy drafts this year, Nate Shepherd is probably going, in like the second or third round. So like after the top freshmen, after like the Charlie Beckers and the De'Aaron Hills, the guys that maybe didn't get drafted last year as freshmen who kind of stood out. And then Nate Shepherds are coming off the board around like the KJ Duff range, right? So for me, I would rather like go with a guy like KJ Duff or a guy like DJ Vonamy before I would do Nate Shepard, just because there is some question marks there. I definitely don't have him as RB2 in Devy. That would seem a little bit high for me, but I'm not like ignoring him either. I think that there's a lot of room to grow. So I don't want to say that I want nothing to do with him, because it's an impressive season for a true freshman, especially like from a receiving standpoint, right? Like that's what you want to see. And he's getting the workload as a rusher too, so there's a lot of room for like improvement, obviously, and it can't be ignored. There's question marks for me, but I don't want to like. It's a really good player to bring up for this conversation because he's difficult to rank. Where I'm putting him right now, I don't have like a, a specific running back ranking right now, but I would say he's pretty comfortably in the top 20, probably closer to like the top 10 range if I had to like put a number on it.
Yeah, Nate Shepard is just within the top 12 for me. And the reason for that being, I mean, John asked, is the athleticism there, right? Is the big time play ability there? And I will say he's got decent burst, but I think there is some lack of speed there. I do think that the second gear is not something that I thought was that impressive. And for a guy who was playing at 5'10", 195, it's a little bit concerning. He's already put on some weight, so I'm not really concerned about him being too small of a back. Like he's listed at 5'10", 205. That's perfect, right? That's a good spot to be for a sophomore player, and that's off the team site for Duke. But I just I just am not quite sure that he's going to test at a special level ever, but he could be a Jadarian Price type of player. And that type of, guy in the right draft class, as we saw, could go in the late first round if a team really, really likes him. He'll get that workhorse role this year. I mean, Nate Shepard's going to get fed. Let's just say that. Like, at Duke this season, Darian Mensah is leaving. I think that's actually going to really negatively impact this offense. Like, the quarterback play is just going to come way down. Unfortunately, Duke is just going to struggle to score and be as efficient. They're going to load the box. Nate Shepard's breakaway run rates, his efficiency, yards per carry, you name it, is all going to go down. So we have to anticipate some of that, unfortunately, just becoming a little bit heavier or tougher sledding there for Nate Shepard in year two. So it's not that he's a bad player by any means. I just think he's solid, and that if we are having him that high in ranks where we're like top five, we probably are going to see that drop this season, I would predict. So he is a difficult guy to rank because for CFF purposes, we want volume, right? We want guys who are workhorses, going to get a lot of receptions, going to get a lot of goal line carries and touches in general. And Nate Shepard should get the volume, assuming that Duke can actually field a competent offense, which with their quarterback play, I cannot guarantee.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, that's why I brought him up. Every time I look at his ranking, I look at his big time run rate and I go, man, this doesn't feel right. And so, that's why I brought him up in the first place. But I guess I'm just really hoping that of all the things, he could take a step forward in that year two. But the truth is, the more I look at these running back ranks, I mean, it's just ugly. There's not that many proven players. Obviously we don't need to go into the Keywan Lacey's and the Jaden Baws and things that get pushed up just because, they've had so many touches. There's other players that have kind of done the same thing. Even your Bo Jacksons and players like that, are more volume based, maybe not to that level, but just because they've touched the ball so many times, you get excited about them. But really, the players that I think are going to end up being exciting for us for Devy purposes, for NFL purposes, are your smaller, younger backs right now, like your Hollywood Smothers, like your Nate Shepards, like your De'Ara Hills, Jordan Davisons. Jordan Davison's not small by any means, but like the younger, obviously, even your Caleb Hawkins. Like, these are the players that I want to push up because they're actually the ones making big plays and doing things like that. And so I'm kind of hoping Nate Shepard will take that step, or he very well will be out of my top 10 if he doesn't. Because if he has another like 6%, 6.5% big time run rate year, yeah, he gone. All right,
That's
Andy,
fair.
we both brought up a running back. You got another running back for us, or are you switching here?
No, I was going to go with a wide receiver and really three wide receivers, but mainly one of them, and it's the Florida wide receiver core. Um, Vernell Brown, Dallas Wilson, and Eric Singleton. I think between the three of those guys, one or two of them is probably going to be very good at the end of the year. Identifying which one that is has been a challenge because Dallas Wilson was obviously hurt most of the year. Only played 4 games in 2025. Um, did decently, right? Like he had at least one game where I think he was close to 100 yards. Vernell Brown, pretty good season as a freshman, slot receiver, 500 yards. Both of those guys are around 2 yards per route run. It's hard to like put a market share on a guy like Dallas Wilson because he's hurt for 2/3 of the season, right? So, and then Eric Singleton is a guy who we really loved when he played at Georgia Tech. Then he goes to Auburn and doesn't have great quarterback play, doesn't get used properly, has a really down season. So, there's some, I guess, a shroud of mystery on whether or not he's going to bounce back with this new team and new offense, new quarterback. And then there's also the question of the quarterback at Florida. Whether it's Aaron Philo or Trammell Jones, are they going to be able to support two or even three wide receivers? Because these are three guys that are getting drafted. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I have to assume that all three of them are in at least the top 50 wide receivers in college football and Devy. Probably a lot higher than that. Eric Singleton is probably the lowest out of the three, and I think he's still a guy that gets a lot of love from a lot of people. So these are guys that are still getting drafted. So to me, like figuring out which one is the one you want to tie the cart to the horse essentially, and like put all the eggs in the basket there. For me, it's probably Vernell Brown. But there's certainly a chance Dallas Wilson, a guy who had a lot of hype coming out of high school, who was injured last year, he could really just turn around and have a great season too. There's nothing that I can say that can say definitively that won't happen. So between those three guys, it's kind of hard for me to figure out which one is the one that I really want to, be invested in the most.
Yeah, I get that. I also struggle with it. I don't have well, I don't struggle with the three. I'm out on Dallas Wilson. I'm just out. I think, when you combine his lack of ability to stay on the field, the fact that he was still struggling to get on the field in spring camps and practices, and then his price, I'm out. Like I just want nothing to do with them. And but then I've Eric Singleton Jr. and Vernell Brown 3 spots away from each other. Technically, Singleton is ahead, and it's mostly because of the A dot. But Singleton's also coming from a different school. We have no idea how exactly they're going to be used and everything. So I will say I believe that Eric Singleton Jr. is a better wide receiver than Vernell Brown, but I don't know that I can say it's by like leaps and bounds or anything like that. I don't know that it's that crazy. So I'm with you. I would say it's not. Maybe it's just because I've loved Eric Singleton for so long. Maybe it's not that difficult for me to rank them. Like I'm perfectly fine saying Singleton 1, Vernell Brown 2, Dallas Wilson 3. But at the same time, once again, Vernell is not that much farther behind him.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a good grouping of players that Andy selected here. So, yeah, I have some similar difficulties ranking them. I do tend to agree that the third or the odd man out, I guess we'll say here, is Dallas Wilson, just purely due to the injury history there. But it's not because of the skill, right? I mean, he is the highest upside, I will say, to becoming just that alpha type of dominant wide receiver. He needs to get healthy, and that's been a major concern now for some time with lower extremity injuries. So I'm agreeing that Vernell Brown, Eric Singleton Jr. are the 1 and 2 options at least right now in how I rank those Florida wide receivers. Now I'll say, yeah, difficult to distinguish between the two because they're both kind of these smaller, fast wide receivers. Not saying that they're slot only options, but because I do think that there's more there for Eric Singleton Jr. Like, I mean, he's 5'10", 180, so like I'm not saying he's going to be like this amazing outside receiver, but he has a little bit more versatility than I think he sometimes you would think with his profile. And yes, he sucked at Auburn last year, but you know who else sucked at Auburn last year? Pretty much their whole entire wide receiver core, right? Including one of the top wide receivers in the nation, Cam Coleman. He couldn't even surpass 13 yards per reception last year, being a very, very talented player. Somehow Malcolm Simmons, though, was just super explosive within the Auburn offense. So I guess it was just the role that he was given and the fact that I guess maybe he's a little bit underrated from a big play standpoint. But getting back on point here, Eric Singleton Jr., I'm not going to hold last year too much against him. Yes, he's a little bit more proven than Vernell Brown. I actually have Vernell Brown edging him out by 1 spot just because I think there's a little bit more theoretical upside. Like we've kind of seen Singleton be solid before, but we saw him struggle last year at the SEC level. Yes, I just laid out why partially that was with the quarterback play and system there. So I'm excited to see Eric Singleton Jr., but it is a new system. He's played for 3 different collegiate teams thus far, so he has to learn this new system, get on the same page. And Vernell Brown, I mean, he's comfortable there after a very promising freshman season. So that's why I have him just edging out those other guys. But yeah, definitely a good grouping of players there to discuss.
I think the important thing that Andy brought up was it's so going to matter who ends up being the quarterback for the Gators. If it's Trammell Jones, I have no hope for any of these players. If it's Aaron Philo, he's not going to ever be a NFL QB or anything like that, but he can be a fun QB who can get us big plays and do things like that, and then we can actually see. I mean, that's the thing about athletic players like your Eric Singletons, like your Vernell Browns, and even Dallas Wilson if he can be 100% healthy. Obviously, a completely different type of athleticism. But if Aaron Jones or Aaron Philo, I'm sorry, ends up being the QB, we can see those huge plays. We can see this actually be an awesome offense. If it's Trammell Jones, you're going to see your dinks and dunks and things, and maybe that's going to lean towards Vernell Brown, but. I don't think it's going to be anything fun or sexy or anything like that, and maybe it won't matter when it's all said and done. So I'm really hoping it's going to be Philo, even though I was just listening to the CFB pod from with our good friend Josh Chevalier and Eric Froton, who actually it was his last pod, but I was just listening to them, and they were talking about how it's definitely not Philo's job yet, and if anything, they might be kind of leaning the opposite direction. So, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But Aaron, you said you had a few for us. I'm working on one. I'm kind of like spitballing something real quick, and I think I got us a good one to talk about after this. But who you got for us?
Well, why don't we stay with the wide receiver position? Because this is a guy where, I mean, I am optimistic for him, that's for sure. But I have him I'm one of the higher rankers on this wide receiver, and that is TJ Moore, Clemson wide receiver, because I have him in the top 6 in my Devy ranks, and I don't know that many people are that high on him. I was just super intrigued with him as a freshman coming in. He's done the necessary things that he's needed to do 2 years into his career, right? And he really did step up when Bryant Wesco Jr. went down with injury. And there is some question whether Bryant Wesco Jr. returns back like full strength and or the durability there. I'm not saying I'm going to predict anything negative for Bryant Wesco Jr., but it's no sure bet. Like, I don't think he's even practiced in the spring with contact. Like, he's working his way back, and sometimes coaching staffs don't know how to handle these neck injuries. So what I will say is TJ Moore, definitely a talented guy, a lot of size, a lot of athleticism there. I think he has the ball skills. He has a lot of different things going for him. Like a year younger than a Deuce Robinson, so I could see a big season in TJ Moore's future. I think the issue is maybe similar to this Florida quarterback conversation and topic is the quarterback play. right at Clemson right now. It's going to be even more of a mess this season. We thought that maybe it was bad last year. Just wait for this year. And I am kind of a Tate Reynolds fan, but he's a freshman, and I like him because he's such a dynamic quarterback with the ball in his hands too, with scrambling. I don't think he's going to be able to feed Bryant Wesco Jr. And then you go down to T.J. Moore and some of the other talented guys they have deeper in that room. It could be tough sledding. So I feel as though having him even in that top 6 to 10 range, that can be kind of risky. And I don't know that I feel as confident in that as I once did. But again, TJ Moore, the talent himself, I think there's a lot there.
I so I like bringing up the Clemson wide receivers because for me, Wesco is the one that's difficult to rank because of the injury. Like, if it wasn't for the injury, he would be hands down my wide receiver 2 in the 2027 class right now. But we don't know with this neck injury, and I think he had like some sort of fusion surgery, what that is going to look like in 2026. So that's where it gets hard. TJ Moore for me has always been like the guy that's really, really good, but just never as good as Bryant Wesco. So I like TJ Moore to be an NFL wide receiver. I just don't know if I'm ever going to have him in like that top tier range. He's always going to be like a tier below, definitely Jeremiah Smith. For me, probably below Ryan Coleman Williams, or at least like similar to Ryan Coleman Williams. I still view Ryan Williams from like what he does as a freshman, hoping that he bounces back this year. But it's not. I'm never gonna knock on T.J. Moore, right? I think he's gonna be a really good NFL wide receiver someday. I just don't know that I'm ever going to be a top tier guy. He's always going to be like in that late first dynasty rookie draft conversation, maybe early second, depending on who comes out and all that other stuff and who really steps up this year. But for me, the really difficult one out of that group is Bryant Wesco because of that injury. But when it comes to TJ Moore, I'm just really not, I guess, too concerned about him. I just think that he is what he is, which is a really good football player, and somebody that I can certainly be excited about for having on my team, but not somebody that I'm like worried about. Like, should I have this guy at wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 8? Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference for me.
Yeah, I think the thing with TJ Moore is that not everyone, but a lot of people were trying to push him up into that top tier, like comparing him maybe not necessarily to Jeremiah Smith, but like up there in that like, oh, the next guy, and that and when people were originally talking about the 2027 class, it was considering TJ Moore and Jeremiah Smith and Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams and all these elite guys, and TJ Moore was considered that. I don't think we're there anymore necessarily. And so now I'm okay with this price and everything because he's dropped a lot for people. And like I still have him as a top 10 Devy wide receiver, but he's not in that same tier as your top tier guys, your Cam Coleman's, your Ryan Williams, players like that. He's not in that same tier for me, so I really don't struggle to really like rank him as far as that. The Wesco thing is obviously the big question mark, but if he had come out fully healthy in spring, I think I would have been 100% back in. But the fact that they were slow rolling him and really, like not even letting him do anything in spring really scares the crap out of me because they originally said he was going to be just fine no matter what, and like he could have come back and all this other stuff, and okay, well then why are we not even practicing him or anything in spring? Like that just scares the crap out of me. It was a neck injury. It was a terrible neck injury. Seeing it on the field. I don't have Wesco that far behind TJ Moore, with the injury and everything. But I think just the fact that he's not even on the field yet, I would still lean TJ Moore for the safety. and just say, like if Wesco burns me, I kind of like I'll be happy about it because that means he got fully healthy, and I'll just say, hey, I missed out on that one, but right now he scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, he does scare me, and I definitely agree with Andy. Like that is, like a big what if. Like if he is healthy, I do agree that Brian Wesco is a little bit better. I actually have him ranked one spot ahead in my Devy ranks, but would I actually act on that? Like I have to ask myself that as well. Would I actually draft Brian Wesco in a startup, or let's say he was somehow available in some sort of like supplemental whatever? Would I actually draft him ahead of TJ Moore or some of the other guys ranked after? I don't know. But yeah, I will say it's an interesting situation there. Maybe both of them kind of get nuked to the season with the quarterback struggles that they're going to have. It is nice to hear. I just looked it up. As of today, the coach said that both Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore are 100% healthy, ready to go heading into the fall. So that's good to at least hear. Still, the concerns and the lack of, maybe some of the reps and those types of things in the spring. We'll see how it affects Wesco and more, even more missed some time there early in the spring. But both talented guys for sure. I will bring up, I got my Scott Fishbowl shirt on, and I'm currently taking part in the Tadpole Bowl, which is the college fantasy football version of the Scott Fish Bowl. And he is still on the board, Bryant Wesco, that is. And, he's projected to score a lot of points, at least on Fantrax, but nobody's taken him yet, and we're almost through 5 rounds. So he is one of those risky players right now. Nobody really knows what to do. Yeah, but I'm actually kind of intrigued with my squad right now. Probably nobody cares, but with that being said, going Anton, Raymond, Rutgers running back, Justice Haynes, Georgia Tech running back, then picking a wide receiver, Nick Marsh for Indiana, then going with Jordan Davidson for Oregon running back, and then Ian Strong going over to Cal. That is my core thus far, and that's a P4 only format, so no group G5 guys included in the Scott Fish Bowl, Tadpole Bowl.
Ooh, I'm liking that team. That sounded pretty strong there, pretty Ian strong. But all right, so I got one here, and I really struggle with how high he is in Debbie Beth, and how low he is in every other person's rankings. But then I think about where he is, what team he is on, and where we've seen other players in his situation end up in the NFL draft and things like that. And I really want to have Trey Richardson pretty high in my ranks, but yet it seems like no one else even like gives him a second thought. Uh, he has a very weird like path to Louisville, which is he's on now. But we just saw what Louisville did, this year with our, with the NFL draft and what what happened there. And it seems like there's something to I'm trying to remember the head coach there at Louisville, but there's something to being his wide receiver one, which is obviously what I believe Trey Richardson is going to be this year, and I'm super excited about that. But like I said, Richardson has had a really weird path. Technically, he's only been in school. This is his 4th year. He's only a senior, but this is his 5th school since he left high school. So he went to JUCO for I believe 1 year. And I mean, trust me, I've tried to do like the research and make sure this is accurate. I think it is. He went to JUCO college for 1 year. Then he went to Toledo. Never played at Toledo. He transferred to Toledo in January. Transferred away from Toledo in April to Washburn College. Played at Washburn for 1 year. Transferred to Vanderbilt. Played at Vanderbilt for 1 year, and now transferred to Louisville. So now on his 5th team since leaving high school in 2023, he is now a senior in college, and he's going to Louisville. But the numbers that he's put up all along the way actually look pretty damn good. And, obviously, like we know Vanderbilt was fun last year. They put up pretty good stats and everything. But man, I have Richardson as a top 20 Devy wide receiver, and it seems like he's being kind of forgotten about. So this is something that I struggle with of like, where am I drafting him? Where am I ranking him? Like that kind of thing. And like, I really don't even hear him besides like for CFF purposes. I really don't hear his name mentioned very often at all.
Yeah, he's not a guy that is on my radar too much. I'll take your word that this is only his fourth season. To me, like when I see a JUCO guy, usually they spend 2 years there, but I know that's not always the case. So I'll believe you there that he only did 1 year at Hutchinson. And shout out the Washburn Ichabods, by the way. Ichabod's mentioned here on Devy Devotional. That's like an S tier nickname for a football team, the Ichabods. But
What exactly is an Ichabod?
that's the name of the Washburn University founder.
No, I know,
Ichabod.
but I'm saying what is an Ichabod though?
Ichabod is his name, the Ichabod Washburn. I think of Ichabod Crane from the Washington Irving's the Headless Horseman, but but apparently the name of the guy who found Washburn University's name was Ichabod Washburn, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, I like Trey Richardson, right? Like he had 800 yards receiving. He played for the GOAT quarterback Diego Pavia last year. It's hard not to be successful with that guy throwing you the ball, but he did it, and now he's playing for like a really pass-happy team, obviously with Louisville. So the numbers should be there from a CFF standpoint, and this Louisville is not a who was the guy who tore his ACL last year that everyone like loved.
Chris
It's
Bell.
Chris something. I
Yeah.
keep blanking on it.
Chris Bell, yeah. So
Chris Bell,
Chris
thank you.
Bell, it's not like they don't get hype for their wide receivers. So this is a guy who I think most would assume is going to be at or near like the wide receiver one for this team. So it's possible, like if he has a good season, that the Senior Bowl is certainly not out of the question. He's going to be on Senior Bowl watch lists all season long. And he's a guy that, if he gets anywhere near 800 yards again, he's going to get invited. So just getting to the Senior Bowl is going to be a big boost for him. And if he can perform there, then things are going to go well. So I don't know where I have him in my ranks per se. He's, like I said, he's not somebody that I'm thinking about even in Devy drafts right now. So he's more of a CFF guy, a C2C guy, and I think that he's probably rostered in a lot of C2C leagues right now, just based on what he was doing at Vanderbilt in 2025. So he's not a guy that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, but I could certainly see things going well for him next year.
I'm definitely torn on Trey Richardson. I have him pretty low in my Devy ranks. I am higher on him for C2C and CFF purposes, like Andy said. I do think he could be very productive this season for Louisville. I will say that I actually wrote him up for the Devy Guide, so the Campus Academy Devy Guide this year. So I'll give you the film breakdown and I guess my perspective of how he plays the game. But Trey Richardson possesses great speed, which allows him to burn past defensive backs. His ability to win deep with speed is great, as he shows skillful tracking of the deep ball. He's a quick player who can succeed after the catch due to his athleticism, though he is not a consistently elusive player. He offers some kick return experience as a prospect as well. Unfortunately, Richardson is not a very nuanced route runner yet. He is an unproven player in contested catch situations, which may be an issue if he hopes to translate to playing outside full-time. While he played on the outside at Vanderbilt in 2025, he lacks some of the key traits that outside guys consistently show. And I went on to say Richardson will need to develop many nuanced aspects of his game to be a successful NFL prospect. But if he can make strides with the technical aspects of his game, he can take a step towards being a much more well-rounded prospect. So I think the athleticism's there. Obviously, the opportunity at Louisville for wide receiver to step up, they need somebody. So he fills a very big need for them. I could absolutely see it, John and Andy. I'm a little bit skeptical until he takes his route running to that next level, just seeing him as a little bit of a raw player, but he is a speedy guy, and that sometimes does catch NFL teams' attention as well, especially when it comes to combine, pro day testing, etc. So I think it's not a bad stab at all in a Devy format late or in Campus to Canton leagues, hoping that, maybe he does take just a little bit of a step up and then get some day 2 draft capital at least.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. So Jeff Brom is the head coach for Louisville, and he has been for at the very least the past 4 years. He probably has been more than that. I'm not going back that far. But for the last 4 seasons, he had Jamari Thrash had in 12 games 858 receiving yards. The next year he had Ja'Cory Brooks, who was one sought after wide receiver who did absolutely nothing in his entire uh, college career. Boom, 12 games, 1,013 yards. Then Chris Bell gets his shot last year. Chris Bell gets 11 games, 917 yards. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing a pattern here. If Trey Richardson is the lead receiver here, you're looking at somewhere around like 900 to 1,100 yards, most likely. And I think that's really going to get him on people's radars. And I think there is a misconception because he's transferred so much that he's older than he actually is. But unless my math ain't mathin', I really don't think he's anything more than an actual senior in college, and so that leads me to still be pretty in on him. We saw Chris Bell be drafted in the 3rd round, but that was with tearing his ACL extremely late. Imagine where Chris Bell was being talked about being drafted in the 1st round had he not torn his ACL. I don't think that Trey Richardson's going to be a 1st round player. Could it be a 2nd or a 3rd round player and somebody that you get for fairly cheap? I think so, but I still struggle because, like I said, Devy Beth has him as a top 20 wide receiver. Obviously, I don't even have to rank him anywhere close to that, and I would still be ahead of the game. Even if a wide receiver 40, I'd probably still be ahead of the game at that point.
Well, I'm thinking that he is a difficult player to rank then because Andy and I, we differ from you as far as where we have him there. So, yeah, another good one.
I think I've got one more if you guys want to allow me, give me the grace to bring another name to the conversation. I want to talk about Darius Taylor again from Minnesota, going back to Aaron's neck of the woods. A guy who we really liked after 2023. We really kind of liked. I would say we really liked him after 2024. And then last year, maybe had like the quietest 900-yard season, if you're talking about like yards from scrimmage, that anyone's probably ever had. Just because it felt like such a bad and injury-ridden season from Darius Taylor last year. Like, he played in a lot of games, but there's games where he's like, okay, he had 3 carries in the game against Northwestern State. He only had 1 carry in the game against Iowa. He only had 8 carries in the game against Ohio State. So it's like he was there, but then, he never finished the game or something else happened. I don't know. But then, like, he finished strong, right? Like, he had a 100-yard game against Wisconsin at the end of the year, and then a 116-yard game in the bowl game, which against New Mexico, but also 34 receptions on the year. Where, like I said, he played 10 games, but really he probably only played like 8 games if you're thinking about in terms of minutes, maybe even less than that. And this is a guy who caught 54 passes the year before, almost 1,000 yards rushing in 2024 as a true sophomore. So the guy we're very excited about at one point in time. Certainly has the size to be an NFL running back. Just the question has always been, can he stay healthy? So that's where we're at yet again, obviously, here in 2026. Can he stay healthy? It seems like there's not any sort of like true competition for him to to take attempts away from him on this roster. So as long as all things being equal in Minnesota, you think that they're still going to be similarly competitive to what they have been in the last 3 years. It should be a good season if he can stay on the field. And if that's the case, and he does do things similar to what we saw in 2023 and 2024? Is this a top 5 running back in the 2027 NFL draft class?
I mean, I definitely agree that Darius Taylor is a awesome value if he stays healthy, and so he hasn't thus far. And I've never really seen him as being a player where it's like, ooh, I think that's a degenerative knee condition or this or that should continue to be an issue. But it is some soft tissue stuff that he keeps getting banged up with, and unfortunately, he just has developed that reputation 3 years into college for just not being able to shoulder a big workload. And I don't think it's really his fault that the efficiency numbers aren't better than what they have been just because of the Minnesota team. It has not been that dynamic the last few years. I know they've won some games here or there, but really I don't really think that the quarterback play has been that great. The wide receiver has been somewhat underwhelming where they really rely on this running game and they have to ground and pound through the Big Ten to try to even squeak out some wins. They're playing against, teams like Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan, etc. So Iowa, some of those teams play really, really tough. I'll say that Darius Taylor has my respect. I really hope that he can squeak into maybe like day two draft capital territory, but I think that's a ceiling if he stays healthy and has a really, really nice season. So I do think there's a little bit of a limited ceiling there. So for me, I don't really have as much difficulty these days ranking Darius Taylor. He's just had to fall down the ranks, just the reality of it with his health and with maybe some of the slightly limited athletic upside and ultimate upside with his profile.
Yeah, unfortunately, he lost the athleticism that he had in year one, or at the very least, he was much more efficient in year one than he was at any other point. So I'm guessing that's because of injuries. Maybe it's because the Minnesota's been so poor, but at the same time, I think at this point we can say like he's that Emmett Johnson level of athlete. But the only thing I would say that's in his favor is that he's 10 to 15 pounds heavier than Emmett Johnson. So like a team might look a little more favorably at Darius Taylor, but we talked about earlier how Nate Shepard has that lower big time run rate than I would like to see. But it was year one. Let's give him some time. Darius Taylor sitting there at 7.2% for his career, and that's going into his fourth year. So, I think we kind of know who he is at this point. The athleticism is just not there. He averages 4.5 receptions per game, which is amazing. But there's no yak, there's no really anything to go along with it. You're talking about 6.9 yards per reception. We really want to see much closer to that 9, 10, or even 11 yards per reception to like really get excited about it. Obviously no one's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, but he was right around that like 11 yards per reception mark. That's when you're saying, okay, this guy's a receiver. This guy can, go out and break huge plays and do all that. 6.9 yards per reception isn't terrible. I've seen worse, surprisingly, but I just don't know that any team's ever going to look at this guy and be like, that we got to draft him in the first round or anything like that. So I don't really struggle to have him or to rank him. He's not even in my top 10 for 2027, but he's not that far out of the top 10. There was a time where I really liked Darius Taylor. That was in year one. And maybe I'll follow the same path with Nate Shepard. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I really hope not. If that happens again, I might have to tweak the way that I look at freshman running backs or something. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see here.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't change your process too much over it because I think everybody was very intrigued by Darius Taylor as a freshman and in the subsequent years. And again, I still am emphasizing the point of like Minnesota, it's not the most efficient offensive system. Like you could have a really talented guy there, and I still don't think they're going to be putting up the same numbers that they would in the ACC or whatever. It is interesting how the injury narrative does change from year to year. We even see guys like at the NFL level, Kenneth Walker. He was able to stay pretty healthy this last year, after being pretty injury prone, like each year getting banged up. And now everybody's forgot about that. They're like, oh yeah, he's going in the early rounds. He's going to the Chiefs. No injury, workload concerns. I still think that there's, sometimes with these guys, these injuries can linger, unfortunately. But they can also get a very healthy, productive season. So it is possible with Darius Taylor. He's still very valuable if you have him on a team where you need some fantasy production for your college side. I very much want to hang on to him. But yeah, if anybody's sniffing around thinking he has big Devy upside, I'm willing to sell for sure.
That being said, I would much rather have Darius Taylor than Keywan Lacey or Jaden Baugh. Just to be
Ooh.
clear, as
I didn't know
much
this was a
as
hot take episode.
as much as I just put down Darius Taylor, he's not as slow as Jaden Baugh. So let's just be clear on that.
Ooh. But Jaden Baugh has intact ankles and hamstrings.
And yet, it doesn't matter. He's still that slow. All right. Well, I think that was it. The funny thing is, I don't even know that we even touched on anyone in your article, Aaron. I think we went completely around it and never actually got into it.
Look at that. Article intact. Go read it for sure. We didn't even talk about any quarterbacks, which I think is a shame that I didn't get to mention our baby Darian Mensah.
I mean, he shouldn't be difficult to rank. You just
Yeah, I
rank
was
him.
just gonna say.
You rank him at one, and then you start ranking everyone else.
Yeah.
And see, I've come around, and this happens from time to time when I'm early on a guy, and then I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be a top 5 type of player. Then he becomes a top 5 player, and then I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be like the number 1 player, though. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I'm feeling with Darian Mensah. I will say that I am seeing a little bit of limitations with the athletic profile and also with the overall arm strength. I think he's a very, very good player. I think he's going to have an excellent season for Miami. So I'm truly excited. I still have him very, very high in my ranks. Do I feel like he's a bulletproof prospect? No, but I mean, I'm willing to still be really high on him. And I think we all love him here. So that's why, I didn't want to try to bring him up early in the show. He was a guy where I'm like, you know what? I actually think we could bring him up, but I know that we're all just so on board that it'd be hard to actually realistically say maybe there's a little bit of hesitation there. But for me, yeah, it's still not that difficult because the quarterback landscape's pretty gross as far as proven guys out there.
Well, the truth of the matter is, and no one wants to talk about it or admit it, but you were saying like he's not a proven tier 1 prospect or whatever. There's no proven tier 1 QB prospects in this class or in Devy. There's just not right now. I don't have a single tier 1 QB in Devy, Beth, and that is not the norm. That is not it's not like it's that difficult or you have to wait until year 3. Drake May was a tier 1 QB in Devy from basically day 1. Caleb Williams was right up there with Drake May almost the entire time. Obviously, getting into like older players, like there's some that have done it from day 1. There's some that have kind of taken time, like a Joe Burrow obviously didn't really break out until the last year. But right now there's none. And so yeah, Darian Mensah is not perfect. He's not 100% proven or anything like that. But I would say he's the safest bet right now. If you're saying like who's going to make it to the NFL and be an NFL starter right now today, I think it has to be Darian Mensah. You start talking about like obviously Arch Manning. We expect him to take a step forward. Is the ceiling with Mensah? No, the ceiling's with Arch Manning. But who would you say is the safer prospect right now? I'm going Mensah. So that's where you start getting into ceiling and floor arguments and stuff like that. That's a completely different story. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I want to go down the road of saying, oh well, he's not tier 1, so I don't love him. Blah blah blah. There's no tier 1 QBs right now.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Just don't shoot the messenger. Thought I'd bring it up. And hey, Felix, he shouted out myself and Andy.
Oh, Felix, there's a third guy
Hi,
here.
Felix.
You forgot.
That's all good. John said some nice things at the beginning of the show, of course.
Of course.
Yeah,
yeah. I wonder. I would imagine that Felix has his boy JKS as a tier 1 QB, even though he has not proven that just yet. But what were you going to say, Andy?
I was just gonna say, like at the beginning of the show, man, I would have thought you and Felix were one and the same. You just couldn't stop agreeing with the guy. I don't even remember what we were talking about. It was
Oh,
Oh,
he agreed with Aaron's article.
yeah, but
no,
like then we were talking about. Oh, it was Isaac Brown. You're like, I
Isaac
have him as my
Brown.
RB1 too. So you and
Yeah, you guys,
Felix,
you
like,
guys are
yeah, you
competing
guys are
for
just
Isaac Brown truther status there.
skipping
Yeah,
down
but
the Ellenbrook Road
he's just a
together with him.
homer. I'm actually like I actually have good process. Like he's just a Louisville homer.
No, no, no. You guys are the same.
I think JKS would have honestly been a pretty good quarterback to also shout out there too. I didn't want to put too many guys who we only have like 1 year of data out there for this
Yeah,
conversation.
that's
Just
tough.
because I mean sometimes it is a small sample size, right? I mean that's always difficult to navigate. Like how much are you, projecting that forwards? Are they going to regress one way or another? I think Cal's done everything that they need to put more weapons around JKS and set him up for a big leap here too. So I think the trajectory is still going to be solid there. We're seeing at least some positive things versus like the Bryce Underwood talk out there has not been overwhelmingly positive for Michigan. So I think JKS, while he'd be fair to for us to probably discuss on the pod as a difficult player to rank, I still like the trajectory that he's on as a young player.
Yeah, I have no issues with him as a top. I have him top 10, but I
Yeah.
just once again there's no tier one, so I'm definitely not going that crazy. And when people start talking about how amazing the QBs, it really reminds me of last year. You guys tried to talk me into the QBs in this class, and I almost even kind of let you do it. And thank God I still, was hesitant to really fall in love with it because you guys are like, no, you got to talk about this player and that player and this player and that. And then, of course, it ended up being one player that ended up being good. I feel like people are doing the same exact thing. Now, maybe there's better odds of these players actually hitting. Like, there was never any odds of Garrett Nussmeier hitting. There was never any odds of Cade Klubnik hitting. Maybe there's odds of Dante Moore taking a step forward. Maybe there's odds of CJ Carr taking a step forward or getting more athletic. Lenore Sellers, finally hitting and things like that. I see it. I see more of the possibility of that happening this year, but we're still asking a lot from these players to take a step forward. And yet, you would be led to believe that there's 8 stud QBs right now. They're coming out next year, and I definitely not all aboard on that train. Up, I'm getting nods and muted
No,
player,
I was just
muted
gonna.
host.
I double muted myself, but I was just gonna say, it's easy to get enthralled with the QB play in like the first 3 or 4 weeks because everyone's playing against Southwest Missouri State University. I'm guilty of it, but I'll try and temper my expectations this year. But I'm sure I'm just gonna get excited about some like Ryan Brown from Purdue again. It happens every year. Somebody has a great game, like, oh, I guess he's him. I guess he's the next second coming of Tom Brady. But it happens
Yeah.
every year. I'm gonna do my best to not fall in love with the QBs this year.
There's a reason why I don't adjust Devy Beth until like at least a month in because it's almost impossible or ridiculous to do it before then. You're going up against these Mercer and whoever schools, and like it's not fair to the teams playing. It's not fair to Texas having to go up against Ohio State in week one and teams like that. I hate to say it, but yeah, I usually wait at least a month before I even do like any kind of updates or anything like that because the numbers and the ranks get really wonky before that with all the FCS teams and everything. But we are well over the hour mark at this point, so why don't we go ahead and get out of here? Aaron, this was a fun one. Pimp out your article one more time. Like I said, we did not even. I think we might have mentioned one player from the article, so obviously there's a lot of names that you still need to know, and it seems like it's a very well received article. So appreciate you bringing it up and giving us the content for tonight. But yeah, go over that, give us some words of wisdom, and let's get out of here.
Sounds good. And you are right. We did not discuss, at least in any depth, the guys from that article. So, yes, go out and check that out at campusdecant.com. Article specifically going over the most difficult players right now for me to rank in Devy.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys listening. Go check out that article. Obviously, go check out the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel and make sure you subscribe so you can be live with us. So I don't just have to hear from Felix and Cole, and every week. As much as we love these guys, I want to hear from you guys, the fans. We had some ridiculous and I mean it as a good thing, downloads and numbers and everything last week, so we're hoping to keep that up. We love the new listeners and we see you, but let us know. We want to hear from you. What do you love about the show? What do you hate about the show? Obviously like and subscribe and do all that kind of stuff as well, but we want to hear from you guys about the show, about your fandom, about your teams, about your Devy. My daughter just turned off all the lights in my house, so I guess that's time to go ahead and close the show. We appreciate you guys listening, but for now, we're going to go ahead and cash out. See you guys.